But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find the baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger. For unto us a child is born. Unto us a son is given. And the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace."
There I am. Good morning, everybody. How are we all today? It's almost Christmas. Yay. I love Christmas. This has probably been the chillest December we have ever had, and it's been wonderful. Not driving around too much. I know we tend to fill our plates pretty full in December, so it's been really good. And I just wanted to point out one thing. So I'm wearing the new sweater, which I normally don't wear the sweaters because I consistently am the temperature of the sun constantly. And so with these lights, I get really hot. But our very own Justin McGarvey was the one who designed these, and so he did a fabulous job, and so I just really wanted to highlight that because they are incredible. So if you see me doing this, that is why. We'll all power through. But I realized as I was preparing for this message today that last year I actually had the opportunity to preach the last Sunday of the year as well, which was kind of fun for me. And I really love the end of year because I'm someone, I don't do New Year's resolutions because I always quit after 3 months. But what I do, I was just telling Britt, I do my little God check-ins. That's what I call them. Towards the end of the year, it's a God check. It's, what do I need to be focusing on this year? What do I need to really switch up in my mind? What do I need to get rid of? What do I need to change up? And I had the opportunity in October to speak at a mom's group on boundaries and capacity. And I loved it, and after I was done, I walked away from it, and I felt like, you know what? That's what I want to speak on at the end of the year. As we look into 2025, because right now we live in a culture that is overstimulated, we're overworked, we are over-guilted by the things we should be doing and shouldn't be doing and go, and sometimes we can be unprioritized in what we're supposed to be doing. So what I wanted to focus on today and what I hope you walk out of here with is thinking about what do I need to change up this year to be the best steward of my time so I can continue to grow in my relationship with God. Because fun fact, we all have the same amount of time in the day. Every single person has the same exact amount of time in the day. Everyone in this room, doctors, teachers, presidents, everybody has the same amount of time. And I always looked at other people and I'm like, how come they get so much done? And I can hardly get lunch in during the day. And it was this big awareness of, I'm the one that's not prioritizing my time. It's not that they have extra time, it's on me. And so for us, as we're thinking about it, it's what do we need to do in our life? Where do we need to set boundaries? Where do we need to adjust in our capacity so that we have the ability to be the best steward of our times? And it can be difficult for people to set boundaries. I am one of them. And I know there's some outliers out there where you're really, really good at just like, nope, can't do it, and you're fine. But the people pleaser in me, I have a really hard time with that because I love to say yes. I love to be a part. The FOMO is really intense with me sometimes. So I like being a part of things. And then it's easy to find excuses for why we can't do certain things of, oh, this has to get done. I have to make sure I'm taking care of X, Y, or Z in my physical health. I have to get my 8 hours. I have to see my kids. I have to spend time with my spouse. All valid things. But when we continue to make excuses, we continue to see the things that actually matter in our life slowly get to the bottom of the pile. And so you might be asking, Miguel, why are you talking about boundaries in church? This seems like a TED Talk, not a church service. But because boundaries is all over the Bible too. And I feel like we're sitting in a time where we're looking at the Bible as one thing, as history, as stories, and then we see our day-to-day life, and we're not mushing them together as they're supposed to be. And we're seeing ourselves working so hard and getting overwhelmed and feeling defeated and feeling purposeless. And then we're wondering why. And then it's because we forgot that God has given us his guidebook and how we're supposed to manage our life. And it's about seeking that word that helps us to get through every busy season, that helps us learn how to manage our time, that helps us in all of these areas. So it's turning back to the word, because everything we do is to glorify God. Everything we do is a part of the kingdom of God. So you might see boundaries as something that's in self-help books. And here's how quickly I can relate boundaries in the Bible, okay? If we're go, 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 we get worked to the bone, we start to get tired, then we forget how to rest. We always forget how to rest in our seasons of busyness. And then at that point, we forget about the importance of the Sabbath. And we no longer hold the Sabbath, and we no longer hold that time of rest. And you see, Jesus talked a lot about the Sabbath in the New Testament, but it wasn't something he just talked about, but it's also one of the 10 Commandments all the way back in the beginning of the time. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. We are called to have a day of rest. And yet we live in a society that actually takes pride in breaking that. And how many cups do you see, or mugs, or signs in your house that say, running on coffee and no sleep? Or the joke like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Or like, I don't know how you do it all the time. You just go, go, go. And there's a little bit of that admiration towards the people that are go, 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 and they have so much on their plate. And so we live in a society, in a time that actually takes pride in the fact that we are go, 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 and that we have no rest. And I used to be that person where people would look at me and they would say, Mackenzie, I don't know how you do it all. You do so many things. You're here, you're there. How do you do it all? And I started to be like, how do I do it all? I'm pretty cool. And I started to kind of find my identity in everything I was doing, and I idolized all of the other things and how many things I had on my plate. And I very quickly realized how wrong that was, because I was dishonoring God in so many ways by how hard I was pushing, and I wasn't resting, and I was idolizing something that wasn't him. And so now when people say that to me, like, Mackenzie, how do you do so much? I'm like, oh no, I'm doing something wrong. And I want friends in my life that'll tell me when I'm doing too much. And Angie Getz, she was the speaker for our Christmas gala. We get together regularly, and when we get together, she doesn't ask me, what are you doing lately? She goes, McKelty, what are you saying no to lately? And she changes that perspective of, what are you saying no to? What are you doing to guard your time, to prioritize the things that are important, and not get caught up in the culture of how many things can I put on my plate, because that's what makes me successful. So another thing that's important when we're thinking about boundaries is a person who was a prime example of who set boundaries was Jesus. Jesus set boundaries. And he is our prime example of how we should be living our life. Because in Luke, it says multiple times that he would retreat for days to be alone, to pray. And he sought after the Lord in prayer constantly, isolating by himself. In Mark 1:35, it says, very early in the morning, well, it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Even though I can imagine his disciples would look at sometimes and be like, there are more people that you could be healing. There are more sermons that you could be preaching right now. There's more that you could be doing, all incredible things, but yet you retreat for days by yourself. Where are you going? And it's, if we as Christians are striving every day to be more like Jesus, then we have to not just look and listen to the sermons that he preached, but actually the actions that he did as well. And understanding that he prioritized spending time with the Father, and he prioritized moving away from the busyness, even though the things he were doing were incredible. He was healing people. He was doing kingdom work, but he still understood the importance of separating himself and finding the time, because he can acknowledge, and we can acknowledge, that spending time with God, that's what actually fuels our life. That's what fuels our soul. That's what gives us energy. And he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So what is giving you life right now? Is it the busyness? Is it everything that you have on your plate? Or is it those moments where you just get to separate yourself and sit in the presence with God and just feel his presence? So if we are not our best self or in our best mindset, and we're not in our best ability then to step in our obedience to what God has for us. Because if we're so distracted by everything else that we have going on in the world, it gets harder and harder to hear him. It gets harder to step into the obedience of what he has for us if we're consumed and we're losing focus on what's really important in life. So if that's the goal, how do we get there? How do we actually establish boundaries? And first thing would be in your activities. We say yes to a lot of things. We find a lot of reasons to be busy. I've got to get my kids here, I'm working, I got to get to the gym, I got to do this, and pretty soon we're filled our calendar to the brim. And everybody knows that saying, you can't give 100% to everything. You can't do your best, so you're giving only 10%. And so our brain literally can't do that much, so we have to learn when it's appropriate to step back. And sometimes stepping back is one of the hardest things to do for many reasons. But I want to give you permission today to really look at your capacity and figure out, where do I need to step back? The first thing, let's stop doing the things we actually don't want to do. That might seem like a surprise. And that's not like dishes. We all got to do dishes, even though we don't want to do dishes. But I mean that thing you said yes to helping with 3 years ago, and now you're still doing it, even though you are miserable being there. Or that workout class you said you would go with your friend, and now Tina's not going anymore, but now you've made a friend Jill there, and you're still there with Jill, and you're like, I do not like this class. This is miserable, but I'm here because I'm people-pleasing, and I don't want to leave because I don't want to disappoint. And we have a fear of disappointing. We have a fear with how many of us in our set has said, if I leave, everything will fall apart. I can't go because who else is going to do it? If I go, they'll be mad, even though it no longer gives you life. It's no longer giving you joy. Or it's a toxic situation, but you feel like you can't get out of it because of all of these excuses and reasons. But again, I want to encourage you, if there's something in your mind that you're like, that's me right now. I'm sitting in that season where I am in a situation I don't want to be in. Really think about, even what if that hard conversation you have, even though you might really not want to have it, think of the freedom that it can bring on the other side. And the freedom it can bring with your time, and the freedom it can bring so that you have that space to take a breath and again, look at what we are prioritizing. So the second thing is, what about the activities that you like to do, but you're starting to realize you no longer have space for? I lived under a false narrative for years that all of these things that I enjoyed doing and God gifted me in, I was supposed to be doing. Because if I really enjoyed doing it, why would God have me enjoy doing it? Why would he give me these gifts if I wasn't supposed to do it? But I was in a season where I was completely overworked, I was tired, I had no energy, and I was not giving my best to any of the things that I was doing. But I had that narrative of God wouldn't ask me to step out of something I like to do and that I'm gifted in. Not always, because sometimes the biggest act of obedience is when we step out of the things we love to do because he asked us to do it. And it's saying, I hear you, God, and I don't want to step out of this situation. I don't want to go, but I hear you, and I know you're asking me to do it. And it could be for a few reasons. It could be that it's a new season for you, that you came into this for a specific person that you were supposed to mentor and be a part of. You came in for a specific season to help with a specific project. You were supposed to start something, and that was your job to start it, but now God is asking you, it's time to move on into something else. You learned everything that you were supposed to learn while you were there. It could have been a lesson. It could have been he walked you through something specifically because there was a lesson to be learned, and it could be a short amount of time or it could be years. But you're sitting in this lesson over and over again until you learn it, and then God says, you're no longer needed here. Or one of the dangers of not stepping out of it, even if you love it, is you could be taking the opportunity away from somebody else when it's no longer your time to be there. God could be raising somebody else up in that space, but now they can't get in because we don't want to go. And I've seen that a lot of times with people where they don't want to step out of something because they love it and they know they're supposed to, but pride or fear stops them, and then they're blocking another chance for someone to grow. Or I've seen people who, they're the yes people. It was me. I was that yes people, and I said yes to people over and over again for opportunities that I know I didn't have the capacity for, but I didn't want to say no. And then I realized my no is someone else's yes. My no is an opportunity for somebody else. So what does that mean? But I think we get scared sometimes to walk away because we wonder, what if it looks like I failed? Did I fail if I walk away? Does it look like I quit? I don't want to look like a quitter. We started a business and it went really well for 2 years, and then you feel like God's telling you to step out. Well, wait a minute, God, you told me to start this business. Or God leads you to leave your home and you move across the state to a new place, and because you felt God told you to, and now you're here and he's telling you to step out of that job. Well, wait a minute, God, you told me to go to this job. There could have been a lesson to be learned. There could have been a reason to get you to point A to point B. But we have the fear inside of us, God, I don't want to do it because I don't want to look like I failed. I don't want to look like a quitter. But here, let me just reassure you here that quitting and discovering your capacity are different. And you haven't failed because you stopped to walk in obedience with God. And there's going to be a lot of people that don't understand it. There's going to be a lot of people that question, well, why are you leaving? What are you doing? You're at your prime. Why would you step out now? But it doesn't mean you fail, and it doesn't mean you give up just because you said, you know what, I'm looking at my capacity and I'm realizing what I can hold. Or you know what, it doesn't make sense, and it might not make sense to me either, but I have the faith to know that God's asking me to do it, and I'm going to step in faith, because that is what obedience is. So bringing reassurance to some of you today that might be sitting there afraid to stop and step out of something, or afraid to not move forward because of the fear of failure or for quitting. But that's not what it means. There's something different. Quitting is being too lazy to do it and you don't want to do it anymore. Discovering your capacity is different. Being obedient to God is different. Staying might only hurt the situation, or it might only continue to hurt you. So sometimes we're placed in these situations or seasons where it's not the end result, but it's a stepping stone. And it's really hard to see the next step of that stepping stone when we're clouded with the busyness of I don't want to, and we don't take a chance to step back and look at our capacity, and we don't have that clear mind to step into that obedience for what God has with us. But in order to take that next adventures, we have to be able to set the boundaries to make sure we have that capacity to do what God is asking us to do next, because that's what it's all about. Because what he might have for you next is even better than what you just stepped out of. I had a personal podcast that I started years and years and years ago, and I did it for 4 years, and I loved it, and it was really fun, but I was starting to feel like God was telling me to close that door. And I said, I don't want to close it because will it look like I failed? Will it look like I messed up or nobody cared? And that wasn't true. And what I learned was that wasn't what it was. And I had learned in that season how to do a podcast. I had learned how to be a host. I had learned all of these things. And stepping out of that then created the space for me to say yes to hosting a different podcast for a ministry, which has been better than I could even possibly imagine. And I've been able to interview some of my biggest role models in life, which feels unreal. But if I would have been so afraid to step out of what I knew to be true, then I wouldn't have been able to step in for the greatness that God had for me next. So sometimes we have to be willing to take that leap. So tips on how to be successful with that: you have to know your capacity, right? So you have to have those honest conversations with yourself and God. You have to take those moments to separate yourself, separate from the noise, and say, okay, God, where am I actually at in my capacity? Have a really honest conversation. Where am I actually at? Do regular check-ins. The second tip is hold your ground and know when to say no. which is very hard for us to do. So I will tell you right now, this is what you can say verbatim, okay? Because this is what I have scripted for myself to say verbatim. If someone wants you to do something, you say, wow, I am so honored you would think of me, but unfortunately, I am at max capacity right now. There you go. You can use that, all right? My gift to you this Christmas season. Short, simple, you don't have to fluff it up in any way. Just say, thank you so much for that opportunity, but I'm at max capacity right now. I have said that to some of you in this room, so now you know. It's true, I say it to everybody, because we have to be honest to hold our ground and hold when we're at too much. The third thing, find people that are gonna keep you accountable in your capacity. A great example of this, we were at a church staff meeting in the fall, and I had just gotten done before we started telling everybody that I have so much going on this fall, I cannot say yes to anything else. I just can't say yes, okay? I'm done, I can't. And after December, I'll be able to help with more things. And we started talking, and not even 5 minutes later, I was like, I could probably help with that. Yeah, that sounds right. And Brooke McGarvey looks at me, shoots her finger out, and she goes, no, you are not helping with anything else for the rest of the year. And I said, you're right, Brooke, you're right. So we forget. And so you have to have those people that are gonna remind you, this is where you're at, this is what you can hold, don't break it. Okay, in our relationships, the only people who are going to be mad about your boundaries are the people who want to cross your boundaries. Okay, let me say that again. The only people who are going to be mad about your boundaries that you create are the people who are trying to break your boundaries and cross your boundaries. So it's really important to look at the relationships we have in our life. Look at the people that we are surrounding ourselves with, and look and figure out what boundaries do I need to create in my life towards people that is going to set me up for success. Because it's one thing to create boundaries in our activities, right? Because those are activities, those are things we do, but people are people, and they're harder to manage. They're more unpredictable. They say things back to you instead of in activities. They can get frustrated by your boundaries, but it's really important to actually take the time to vocalize your boundaries to people right from the beginning. So once you understand them, vocalize them and say, this is where I'm at. In order to be my best self right now, I just can't step into that. Or you know what, I'm in a really busy season. I just can't. And if there's that person that keeps pushing and pushing and pushing, you gotta have that honest conversation with them. Saying, this is my boundary, and I'm just asking that you respect it. And there are gonna be times where we don't have a lot of time to go into this, but I think that we unfortunately haven't talked enough in the church about what it means actually to step away in friendships, because unfortunately there's a concept and mindset of we have to be friends with everybody because that's what Jesus would do. But sometimes there are relationships that are toxic and we should no longer be a part of them in our lives. And so it's finding that boundary, because people can put their yuck onto you, and that will change who you are, and that will defile who you are. So it's really important to look at the boundaries that you have and stick to them. Okay. I'm gonna have the worship team come back up. I know this was a lot more practical of a message than I typically do, but I just really felt like it was important to talk about this in my prayer time when I was thinking about it, because boundaries are something that every single person needs to have to be successful. And we all have a capacity that we hold. And the people who are holding on to their capacity and it's getting too full and it's too full and it's too full, you're gonna break. You're gonna break. And I loved that this was the last message of the year, because for me, it actually really wrapped up into the theme of this year of wonder. And it's kind of surreal that this is the last official Sunday of that theme of it being wonder. Because to me, I have to be obedient in my capacity so that I can live in the wonder of God. Because if I'm too filled with the noise, if I'm too busy with everything else that I'm doing, I don't get the ability to sit and be obedient and to hear what God has in store for me. Because I'm too consumed by everything else that I have going on. So in order for me to truly step into the wonder that God has for me, I have to be willing to say no to some things that maybe I don't want to say no to. I have to be willing to have those hard conversations so that I have the ability to see what God truly has in store for me. Because I'll tell you, the beginning of last year in January was a very different season of my life. Very different. And truly, I was at a place where I'm like, I just sometimes wished I could just get in the car and drive away and never come back. It was just a really hard season. And I remember sitting here and hearing Justin talk about wonder, and that was going to be our theme. And I said, you know what? Fine. Okay, God. Can't get much lower than this, so I'll give it to you. I will say yes to everything that you tell me to say yes to, and say no to the things you tell me to say no to. I want to live in your wonder because I know you are the God of wonder. You are the God of miracles. I knew that in my heart. And so I said, yes, I will do that. And then you know what I did? I did the harder part where I actually let him do it. I actually had to let him go into every single area of my life and let him do what he wanted to do, because I had to understand that it was his vision and his knowledge that really surpassed everything that I could see, and I had to trust that he understood the bigger picture. And let me tell you, we made a lot of changes in this last year. We moved to Buffalo. Surprise, here we are. Thank you, Lord, on your wonder. And that's where we just have to keep saying yes to those little things. But it was allowing him to come into that space and to do the things that he could do and live in his wonder where changes would be made. And sometimes it's so hard to say, yes, God, you can come in, but don't touch this area. But I'm not going to leave my job if you tell me to. No, we're not going to move. No, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. That's too much. But here's a fun fact too. The areas that we tend to want to hold back from God, it's those areas that if we actually surrender them to him, that's when our lives are going to change the most. If we truly take those areas that we don't want God to touch, there's usually a reason we don't want him to touch it, right? There's usually a reason. But when we say, God, you can take it, ooh, you can take it. I don't really want you to, but you can. It's so amazing to see what he can do. Because I think some of us, and this is me included, it's not that we've forgotten who God is, but we've forgotten what he can do. We've forgotten how powerful he is. We've forgotten that he is the King of Kings, that he straight up made water part, that he could make a mountain move, that he is orchestrating our steps before we even know it. And so we know who he is, but we forget what he can do. And so this year, I just challenge you, as you're thinking about 2025, how can I live in a year of wonder? How can I live truly giving everything that I have to God, fully believing that what he has for me is better than I can even imagine, fully believing that if I give him every single area of my life, I wonder what he can fully do. And in order to do that, where do I need to let go of? What in my life do I need to surrender? What do I need to say no of so that I can say yes to? What do I need to adjust so that I can take more of those hours just to be alone with him in the morning? 30 minutes of sleep sounds so much better, but 30 minutes with the Lord will actually change your life. So we need to remember what truly is going to give us life, what's truly going to energize us. So I'm going to pray, and then we're just going to go into this time of worship. And I just really encourage you to ask the Lord, what do I need to do this year? Where do I need to set a boundary? Where is my capacity? Is it overflowing? What do I need to do? So God, I just thank you that you are truly the God of wonder. That you are the God that sees us inside and out. You know our capacities. You know the areas that we need to say no and we need to say yes. The areas where we're afraid to step out of because we don't understand and we don't know what the outcome will be. The things we're scared to say yes to because we don't think we're good enough. We don't think we're equipped enough, but we know you're asking us to do it, but we're so full of fear. God, I just pray that you would just reveal to everybody in this room right now, reveal to them your heart. Reveal to them the heart that you have for them. and what we need to do this year so that we can create space for you. Thank you, Jesus.